I think I've read the same story 5 times in a row now. Hey guys, welcome back. Today, let's chat about Ali Hazelwood's latest release, Love on the Brain. As you probably saw from the title of this video, this is a spoiler talk, so you know, the usual, proceed with caution if you don't want anything from the book spoiled. Before we do dive in, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want more book videos. Love on the Brain was released August of 2022. So this book centers on Dr. B. I'm not even going to pretend to try and pronounce her last name. Everyone knows I'm terrible at pronunciations of pretty much everything, so she's Dr. B. She is 28 and she's a neuroscientist at NIH. In the story, she has just gotten accepted to be a co-lead in this project with NASA. They're doing this project, it's called Blink, and they're going to be creating special helmets for astronauts to help them improve their brain function when they're on missions. Her other co-lead is 32-year-old lead engineer Levi. He already works at NASA. B and Levi know each other from grad school, and B is under the impression that Levi has always hated her, and she thinks they have this whole, nemesis thing going on. Obviously, that's not the case, and then while working on this project, they become fuck buddies. Now, for this book, I was very excited to read it when I saw that it was being released because of how much I loved the love hypothesis. But then my excitement started dwindling more and more after I read her 3 novellas. You can see my thoughts on those books in a different video that I did. I will link that below. But I still wanted to read this because I was convinced that her full-length novels are probably better than her novellas. I was sorely disappointed when I realized that this is going to be the exact same formula as every other story she does. And honestly, it's starting to get old. We have this teeny tiny quirky female lead in this brooding, big as a mountain, gorgeous male lead. So B is basically the exact same character as Olive from the Love Hypothesis, except B has purple hair and a septum piercing. Oh, which, by the way, I'm kind of obsessed with septum piercings. I've been trying to decide for months if I want one, but I'm not sure if it'll look good with my hoop near nose piercing. But regardless, I love the look of them, and I was like, oh yeah, girl. When I read that she had one, I was like, I like that. So anyway, we have B, and then we have Levi, the main male character. He is the poor man's Adam Carlson, but honestly, I don't know if she could ever top Adam in terms of characters. I really loved him, but as they're described, physically, they look super similar, except I think the cover drawing of Levi is a little fugly. He's a little hard to look at on this cover. I don't like him. So this book is told from B's point of view, and it's first person. But when I was reading it, it felt like it was more like reading this weird rambling journal entries. And then also the book talked more about Dr. Marie Curie than I ever thought it would, to the point where it was almost like a mini biography for her. Throughout the entire book, in almost every single chapter, there were these page-long stories about her and her professional life and her personal life. And it was interesting learning about her because I didn't know very much about Dr. Curie. And so it was interesting to know her entire life story, basically. But that's not really what I was here for. I feel like I could have just Googled all of that. I didn't really need it very much inserted into the book. I feel like Ali Hazelwood probably has an immense love for Dr. Curie, and so that was her just basically fangirling throughout the entire book, which again, it was interesting hearing about her. Yeah, she sounds like a badass and all that. But that's not what I was here for. Now, in terms of the story, this book was a lot more science-based than The Love Hypothesis had been, and it dove into the politics that go along with the science world. The romance aspect really didn't pick up until the 50% mark. So if reading about science isn't your jam, that part of the book I think could get a bit taxing. While I did feel like those parts of the book were well done, like really diving deep into it, I did feel like the relationship development was extremely lacking. I needed more chemistry between the two leads than what we got. Unlike with typical romance books that I read, for this one, I was not dying for the two main characters to be together in the end. Like, I could have gone either way by the end of the story, and that's not really what you want from a romance book. So let's do a hopefully quick go through of the story. I swear I'm going to do this as quickly as I possibly can because I tend to ramble. B arrives in Houston with her research assistant, Rocio, I think. She's going to be the co-lead of NASA's Project Blink, like I said earlier. They're creating helmets for astronauts. When B arrives, she realizes that she will be co-leading this project with Levi, who she thought hated her in grad school because he would always give her like weird looks and he acted like he couldn't stand to be around her. Also, while B was in grad school, she was engaged to a man named Tim, who apparently had been cheating on her the entire time they were together, and she eventually broke it off with him when she learned that he had slept with her best friend. We also learned that B runs this Twitter page called What Would Marie Do? There she connects with other women in STEM, and she's formed this online friendship with this man who runs another academic Twitter handle, and they DM pretty frequently. Now, nobody knows who is behind these two Twitter pages, and also in their DMs, her and this mystery man haven't exchanged names or anything. So they don't know who the other person is that they're talking to. So throughout the story, we get to read their DM conversations pretty regularly, and it's insanely obvious that it's Levi who runs the other page. So throughout the book, we get to read about her DMing this guy, and she's complaining about her co-lead on this project and like how terrible he is. And then the other guy, the Twitter guy, is telling her how much he's in love with this girl that he's working with that he thinks is married. Like I said, it's painfully obvious that they're just talking to each other. So we also have a couple of other like plot side points. We have Guy, who is an astronaut, who is going to be the test subject or a test subject for this project. Him and B have communicated in the past on like a personal level, so she somewhat forms like a friendship with him. Rocio, her RA, is this weird added inside character. She's like super emo and dark, and she starts this relationship with Kaylee. She's this like bubbly and sweet project manager. We also have extreme side characters like Lily and her daughter Penny, who Levi helps Lily take care of Penny as Lily's husband, Peter, had died, and Peter was Levi's best friend. And then we also have, I think it's Reiki, who is B's twin sister, and they talk on the phone a lot, and we learn that when the sisters were young, their parents died, so they spent their childhood bouncing around the world, like living with different relatives. So those are the random side things that are happening when we're not talking about STEM. So this entire book is focused on this NASA Blink project. In the first half of the book, the project is just getting started. B is very unhappy about having to work with Levi. She assumes that he feels the same. As soon as she arrives at NASA, she has all sorts of problems with being able to start working on her project. She has no access to anything within NASA. None of her requested equipment has arrived, and Levi seems to be giving her the constant, like, cold shoulder. It was weird in the beginning. it seemed like it was almost going to be like this bully romance because of the way Levi was acting. It seemed like he was being like intentionally mean to her. B assumed that he was like the reason that her equipment wasn't there. She thought that he was like sabotaging her and like leaving her out of meetings and like not responding to her emails. So it felt like he was doing it intentionally. And then she confronted him about it, and they had this really awkward exchange. Like, he was just so weird, and like, I just wanted to like punch him in the face, and like, I just didn't understand like why he couldn't give her like a direct answer with anything that he would tell her. And like, he was just being so weird and annoying. Just tell me why, Levi. It's a complicated situation. Is it? It seems pretty simple. He shakes his head, carefully considers what to say, and then somehow lands on the most ridiculous 5 words I've ever heard. Give me a few days. A few days? Then go home for a few days. His tone is harsh. Visit your partner. Come back later. I am doing what I can, he begins, which is nothing. With the resources I have, oh come on, there are things you don't know. Then tell me, explain. The ensuing silence cinches it for me. The way his jaw tightens, the fact that he straightens and turns abruptly, pacing 3 steps away as though he's finished with this, with me. You never even started, asshole. Right, well, I shrug. I'm going to your superior, Levi. He gives me a shocked look. What? Over my head? There is no such thing. Don't do it, B. Like, he's just being so... I'm asking you to trust me. Like, he's just being so weird. So basically every interaction that they have, he's super evasive and like he doesn't want to talk to her. And he's like, just stay away from me, basically. And all of their exchanges up until they basically started banging were like this. Like, Levi was basically just being a big old weirdo. And the majority of the book, I just didn't believe the Levi character. I have this really hard time believing that this head lead engineer for NASA, who is an excellent interpersonal communicator with everyone, freezes up when he's around B. And later we're told this happens to him basically because he thinks she's pretty and he has a crush on her. Like, are we 12? Levi, you fucking freak. Like, Ali did the same thing with What's His Face in Under One Roof, where we had this like uber successful lawyer who literally couldn't form sentences around the female main character to try and tell her how he feels. Like, it's just not cute. And I don't find that charming coming from the main male character. The fact that they're the, like, blubbering messes because they have a crush on someone. So, after we have this weird confrontation where B's like, where's my shit? We learn that Levi has been trying this whole time to get B's equipment and all this stuff. But the holdup has been on NASA's end because there's some political bullshit between NASA and NIH, and NASA not wanting to share the credit on the patent for the helmet. So NASA's dragging their feet to start the project because they want to wait until they have enough funding to drop the partnership so that they can get full credit for the patent. Then they decide, never mind, let's continue with the project once Levi does some digging and he finds that there's basically another company who is also working on a similar project. And he tells his boss this, and then NASA decides like, oh, let's try and beat this other company. And they're like, okay, now we're okay with sharing the credit because we want to beat this other company to it first. Like I said, we go on and on with this, like all these like political stuff of like, you know, like the inner workings of like these companies and shit. But once this is all decided, once it's all said and done, B gets all of her equipment, and we have a lot of passages of them working. So while they're working nicely together, B is constantly ribbing Levi, being like, I know we're enemies, but I'm glad we're putting aside our differences to work together, even though I know you hate me, you hate me, you hate me. And she's like, I hate you too, and all this stuff. And he keeps being like, you know, like, I don't, but he won't like tell her. It's just, it's so cringy. Oh my god, like Levi was such like this mess of a character. He really was. They both were kind of messes of characters, honestly. Like, she was aggressive and like was like so convinced that he like had this vendetta against her, and he was so confused because he didn't understand why. He doesn't understand that him being a fucking weirdo like gives a wrong impression. And so Levi thinks B is married up until page 187. So when he realizes that she isn't, this is when finally the romance aspect of the book begins. And again, this is like halfway through the book. Like, this whole time we've just been working on this helmet, and she's literally just being over here like, we hate each other, and he's over here like, I love you. And it's just like, like there was no chemistry, and there was nothing for me being like, oh, I hope they end up together. I'm just kind of over here like, God, they're weird. So they go to this conference together, and while they're there, they see her ex-best friend, the one who fucked Tim, and they see Tim. And this is when, during this conference, is when B tells Levi about why her and Tim broke up. And Levi tells her that Tim basically told him to stay away from B, and that's why he's always been so weird around her. And then she like goes through all of like all of these lists of examples of like when he was a dick to her, and like he basically just tells her he's stupid and that he freezes up around her. So now, knowing B is single, Levi starts to start laying on the charm, and it works, and they literally turn into like basically fuck buddies. Well, fuck buddies in B's eyes, because she has like this whole thing against commitment, but Levi's in this shit for the long haul. And literally sometimes B is too dim for her own good throughout this book. She had multiple people mention to her that Levi has been pining over her for years, which, by the way, I think is a little weird. Like, he's put his like whole dating life on hold because basically he's been in love with her for like 6 years, but during this time he thought she was taken that whole time. So he just like put his whole life on hold because he's like, no one could ever live up to B. So the first instance we have of people being like, oh my gosh, he loves you, is at when they're at the conference. We have Sam. They run into Sam, and she's like their old advisor from back when they were in grad school. And she is like, why didn't I know you two were here? Because we're not on the program. We just drove up for a specific presentation. Sam's eyes widen. She looks between us a few times before settling on Levi with a huge pleased grin I cannot interpret. You can't interpret. Then she shakes one of his hands. I didn't know there was a we, Levi. I'm so happy for you. I've been hoping for so long, and finally such an incredible B and I working together on a NASA project temporarily. He says it quickly. Sam gasps, covering her mouth. Of course. The NASA project. I can't believe it slipped my mind. Still, you two should come to my brunch and all that stuff. And then her ex-best friend is also at this conference. They run into each other. She says, so you and Levi, huh? He's even hotter than back at Pitt. I shake my head. It's not like that. He probably made all his dreams come true. He looks happier than I've ever seen him. Not that I'd seen him happy like ever before today. A cold shiver runs down my spine. I have no idea what she's talking about. Actually, Levi hated me, I say stubbornly. Again, with this. Come on. You're smarter than that. Let's go. I doubt it. Not by any definition of that term. He is just really... She shakes her head firmly. This isn't what I came to talk about. I don't know why I keep going on about stuff like that, all that stuff. Come on. Girl, that's two. Okay, so then the next instance, they are at his friend Lily's house. She smiles, covering her hand with her palm. Thank you for not thinking that. She gestures vaguely to herself, the house, Levi, and even me. All of this is weird. Having this woman who's always calling the man you're dating. Oh, it's not like that. We're just... My eyes dart to the swing. Can I talk about sex within 100 feet of a child? Is there a law against it? It must be uncomfortable considering that Levi and once they dated for like a few weeks. It's long over. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. They're long over. We met here in Houston. We came to spend the summer with Peter before the last year of his PhD. And then he went back to Pittsburgh. We were supposed to try long distance, but he said he met someone else. That's what I said when I said that he put like his entire dating life on hold when he met a taken person. The pang turns into a thud. Who did Levi meet in his 5th year? Well, me, duh. But he can't have broken up with someone like Lily for... Yeah, weird, right? So they all said some variation of the same thing, and immediately she's like, oh no, they can't be thinking that. That can't be true. He hated me. And it's like, this whole like denying / like being oblivious / like playing dumb thing, like it got fucking old, man, throughout this book. I was just kind of like, girl, come stop. And Ali Hazelwood did the same type thing in The Love Hypothesis, where Olive was like very convinced that Adam like wasn't into her, even though like it was obvious and there were all these clues, but she didn't quite get the clues all together. But I don't feel like she had people very specifically looking at her on like 3 separate instances and being like, yeah, he's always really been into you. And then her just being like, that's not possible. Like, it's just one of those things where like, I remember when I was reading The Love Hypothesis, I was like, kind of a new idea. And I was like, oh, how cute. He's been pining after her for years. Like, that's gonna be so cute when she realizes and they end up together. But now, after reading so many stories of this same thing, I'm just kind of over here like, you idiot, he likes you. This is so stupid. You're being so dumb. Like, catch up on the signs here. Like, come on, like, let's catch up in the story. Like, it's all obvious. It was just, it wasn't cute. It stopped being cute. So that's my frustration. I don't know if I wouldn't have read all of her other stuff, if when I was reading this, I would have liked it. But I think since I feel like it's overdone, I'm just annoyed. So at this point, like I said, they've started having sex. They're fuck buddies. She moved in with him. They lived together for like 2 weeks. And then during this time, she's in denial about his feelings. And she's 100% convinced that they're fuck buddies. And also... Side note, we have this weird small passage where she goes to dinner with his parents, and Levi's complete backstory is identical to Joshua's from The Hating Game. Basically, if you don't know, he's a disappointment to his family because he didn't take the same career path as every other family member, and it was exactly the same, but I felt it was better executed in The Hating Game. So, okay, let's wrap this story up. So we get to the end of the creation of this helmet, and they do a testing of it in front of all of their bosses. This test ends up going horribly wrong because it gives Guy, the astronaut from the beginning, remember him? It gives him a seizure. Because that was like the neuro part of the design, Bee gets blamed for this. So she goes home and she starts packing to leave because she's devastated and she's probably going to be pulled from the project. Then Levi shows up to her apartment and is like, don't leave, I love you. And she's like, nope, bye. So Levi leaves, and then before he leaves, he gives her a flash drive. She watches it. It's basically like a compilation of this security footage from her office where he's like stringed together this footage of this office cat that she's been feeding. But in this footage, she sees something fishy. She sees that her computer is unlocked in some footage, but she knows that she always locks her computer. So she's goes to NASA in the middle of the night because she has this suspicion that, you know, something's going on. So she goes there to kind of like investigate. So while there, the story turns into this soap opera shit where Guy the astronaut shows up and blocks her in her office and reveals his whole evil plan where he sabotaged the test by taking caffeine pills so that it wouldn't go according to plan. And he's been trying to sabotage this helmet project from day one because he's bitter that he wasn't made to be the co-lead instead of Levi. Because originally this plan or this project was him and Peter's project. And remember, Peter from the beginning was the dead best friends. Once Peter died, Guy's name got taken off of the project. NASA framed it kind of as like this tribute to Peter, but Guy was super salty that his name got taken off of it because he had been working on it for so long. And it turns into this whole like Scooby-Doo thing where he's like, and I would have gotten away with it too if it wouldn't have been for you meddling kids. I have to read this. It was just like, I literally was like, is this how this is going? What did you do? I murmur. I did what I had to do. This morning I took a few caffeine pills just to be, you know, excitable, and I fudged the protocols. But you who put me in this situation, you and Levi, because B, he was obsessed with you. The second NIH nominated you, he had to make Blink happen, and I tried to do what I could, make you guys fight a little delays, missing files. For a while you seemed stuck, and I hoped time would run out and you go back to NIH. His eyes are a little crazed, but you cracked it, and I had to do it. Today had to happen. They won't let Levi stay on the project. When I found out you weren't really married, that Levi lied to me, I was very upset. It didn't take long to realize, I can't believe you're fucking him, B. Your Twitter was on your computer and I'd been following your online identity, so I knew what to do. You were supposed to hate him. When NIH selected you, Levi told me you had issues in the past, and I thought, perfect. He sighs like he's deeply tired. And then you fell in love. Who does that? Are you crazy? I'm angry because it would have worked out great if it wouldn't have been for you meddling kids. If you hadn't noticed the security footage, I guess I got a bit sloppy by editing myself out. What were you looking at anyway? You are crazy. Yeah, maybe. Let me go, I say. B, he opens his eyes. You don't need to be an evil mastermind to acknowledge that I cannot let you go. What's your plan then? He takes something out of his pocket. No. Is that a gun? I gasp out. Yeah, he sounds almost apologetic. My entire world stops. What? Where did you even? Is that even real? Yeah, easy to get one. He holds a gun like he hates it almost as much as I do. NRA's crazy here. Guess I'm having the full Texas experience, I mumble, numb. Did you know that the Sullivan prototype should have been the Kowalski-Sullivan? Of course, Peter had to get his head smashed. He stops, pausing for a moment. Okay, that came out wrong. I was sorry when it happened, but my work on Blink was erased by virtue of dying. Peter got all the credit, and it would have been fine, but then Levi offered to lead Blink out of some misplaced guilt, and they chose him over me. I had no control over something I had spent years working on. So he gives his full dramatic speech, like out of some fucking soap opera shit, and then this office cat that I had mentioned earlier appears and attacks him. So then she's able to run away. And then Levi shows up and he tackles Guy to the ground and restrains him and saves the day. And then everything's peachy. And later, Levi and B, they end up together. Of course, you know, happy ending, etc. I didn't forget to mention. I chose not to add this into my synopsis of this book or this recreation of this story. There's this whole Twitter side plot, and this goes beyond just her, you know, talking to this guy, Levi. So B had kind of accidentally started this movement to stop standardized testing for students, that they have to take, these tests that they have to take for students to get into grad school. She started by tweeting something and it turned into this whole thing. And then Guy had hacked into her Twitter and basically had ruined her online reputation. And then B realized that Levi was behind the other Twitter account because in a picture that he had posted, she recognized his cat and the background of the inside of his house. I didn't really get into the deep diving of this Twitter subplot with the whole movement and everything. It was kind of a big plot point, and her RA had like a lot to do with it because she kept talking about it, but she didn't know that B was the person behind the account. And it was like this whole side plot. But I feel like this whole Twitter side plot thing could have been removed from the book, and the like page counts that she used to develop this plot could have been utilized elsewhere. I wanted the author to explore more of B's background with why she wasn't interested in anything long-term for relationships. She kept telling us that B was afraid of it and nothing lasts forever. And she told us that this was like due to her parents dying when, you know, she and her sister were young, and from like always having like temporary homes, from jumping around from family member to family member. And then also in addition to like her shitty relationship with Tim and how that ended. But I feel like we were just kind of like more told these things in passing, and I didn't feel like they were like a major part of the story when I felt like they should have been a major part of the story, because, you know, they were the crux of why she was so adamant about not wanting a relationship, and like why she was just constantly denying the fact that like Levi had feelings for her, and she was constantly just like, no, we're just friends that have sex. And I feel like exploring it more would have helped with the romantic development in the book. And then I also think that this book would have benefited from a dual point of view with Levi. He was such a bland character, and he was so awkward. It would have helped a lot to have his point of view in the story. I needed help to build the tension and to understand him more, and give me more of like an explanation for like why he's so weird. And like I needed to see like inside of his mind more, because he was just like a blank wall. So it feels to me that the character development and the relationship development was put second in the book to the whole STEM stuff, which is fine if you want to read a book about science and, you know, people working in the science related fields. But to be honest, I don't really. Like, I liked the whole science dynamic thing. It was great with the love hypothesis. In that book, it felt like new and fresh. I had never read anything with like characters in STEM before, and so I was interested and I was curious. But here we are, 5 Ali Hazelwood stories later, and I'm a little tired of the same thing. I came here for the romance, but I felt like that was poorly done. So in the very back of the book, it does say that her next book, Love Theoretically, is releasing in fall of 2023. So maybe by that time, in about a year, I'll be itching to read another STEM book, and I'll be excited for it. But dear Lord, I hope she doesn't release any more novellas in the meantime, like in between the next book release, or like anything with like the exact same story before this next book. Like, I feel like she needs to give these books some time to breathe and like let the readers forget for a year that you write about the exact same things, so that we will enjoy the next book in a year's time. Or better yet, like let's branch out from writing the stories about the same thing of like these enemies where the guy's been secretly pining for years and she has no idea. Like, I'm just so bored of that dynamic. So that's it for my bitching today, guys. As always, thank you so much for spending your time with me. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!